The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as I pushed my cart down the familiar aisles of Walmart. It was late, past midnight, but I needed groceries, and this was the only time I could find a shop without the crowds. The store was eerily quiet, the only sound the squeak of my cartwheels on the polished floor. As I turned into aisle 13, I felt a sudden chill run down my spine. Aisle 13 was notorious among the employees for strange occurrences. Items falling off shelves, lights flickering inexplicably, and whispers heard when no one else was around. I dismissed it all as superstition, but tonight, as I entered the aisle, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I focused on my shopping list, trying to ignore the uneasy feeling creeping over me. Canned goods, pasta, and then there it was on the bottom shelf, a lone jar of pickles. As I reached down to grab it, I froze. A voice, soft, almost a whisper, echoed through the aisle. "Help me!" I spun around, heart pounding in my chest. The aisle was empty, shelves neatly stocked with products, but there was no one in sight. My hands shook as I scanned the aisles on either side, but they too were deserted. "Hello?" I called out, my voice echoing faintly. Silence greeted me in response. Shaken but determined to finish my shopping, I hurriedly grabbed the jar of pickles and moved on to the next item on my list. But as I reached for a box of cereal, a box on the top shelf tumbled down, narrowly missing my head. I stumbled back, heart racing as I stared at the fallen box. This couldn't be a coincidence. Someone or something was in aisle 13 with me. I glanced around nervously, but the store remained eerily quiet. I considered leaving my cart and hurrying out of the aisle, but I needed these groceries. Steeling myself, I continued down the aisle, my senses on high alert. As I approached the end of aisle 13, the lights above flickered ominously. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. A figure, shadowy and indistinct, appeared at the far end of the aisle. It stood motionless, watching me with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. I couldn't move. Fear rooted me to the spot as I stared at the figure, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. It seemed to waver in and out of focus, its features obscured by the flickering light. "Who are you?" I managed to whisper, my voice trembling. The figure didn't reply. Instead, it began to glide toward me, moving effortlessly across the polished floor. Panic surged through me, and I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over my own feet. I turned and ran, abandoning my cart as I sprinted down the aisle, heart pounding in my chest. Behind me, I heard the sound of footsteps. Not human footsteps, but something else, something unnatural. They echoed through the empty store, growing louder with each passing moment. I dared a glance over my shoulder and saw it. The figure, now closer, its form shifting and changing as it pursued me. I veered around a corner, my lungs burning as I raced toward the front of the store. The exit was just ahead, tantalizingly close. I pushed myself harder, desperation lending me strength as I burst into the main aisle. And there, blocking my path, stood a crowd of people. They were staring at me with blank expressions, their eyes empty and devoid of life. I skidded to a stop, heart pounding as I realized they weren't moving. They were standing perfectly still as if frozen in time. "What's going on?" I gasped, my voice echoing through the silent store. No one answered. They just stood there, watching me with unseeing eyes. Dread settled over me like a suffocating blanket. I backed away slowly, heart racing as I searched for another way out. And then I heard it, the whispering, soft at first, like the rustling of leaves in the wind, but growing louder with each passing second. It seemed to come from all directions, surrounding me in a cacophony of voices. "Join us. I turned and ran, dodging past the motionless figures as I sprinted toward the back of the store. I had to find another way out, had to escape this nightmare. The whispering grew louder, filling my ears with a chorus of eerie voices that sent chills down my spine. I rounded a corner and stumbled into the employee break room, empty, abandoned. I slammed the door shut behind me and leaned against it, gasping for breath. The whispering was fainter here, but still present, a haunting melody that seemed to seep through the walls. I sank to the floor, tears streaming down my face, as I struggled to make sense of what had just happened. Had it all been a hallucination? A nightmare brought on by fatigue and stress? But then I heard footsteps outside the door, real footsteps, heavy and deliberate. I froze, my breath catching in my throat as the handle began to turn slowly. "No," I whispered, backing away from the door. "Please, no." The door creaked open, revealing a figure standing in the doorway. It was the same shadowy figure from aisle 13, its form shifting and wavering in the dim light. It stepped into the break room, moving closer with each deliberate step. I pressed myself against the wall, terror consuming me as I realized there was no escape. The figure stopped just a few feet away, its presence looming over me like a shroud. And then, with a voice that echoed with 1,000 whispers, it spoke. "Welcome to our world.